Welcome to my inspirational webinar on the UK Global Talent Visa in Digital Technologies. This is an inspirational webinar where I will interview a successful client of mine. But before I do that, I will give you contents of what I'll talk about. I'll talk a little bit about myself and the technician announcement on the 31st of March. What is the Global Talent Visa, the Stage 1 endorsement application and process. I'll also interview Claire, one of my clients who just received her endorsement, and then I'll open the floor so that you can ask questions for Claire as well. So just a bit about me if you don't know, my name is Michelle. I am Vietnamese. I'm an Australian citizen and I'm also a British citizen. I am a global talent visa coach, and the reason how I got there was I was an exceptional talent recipient in 2016. That was way back when it first started. I was one of the top 50 that received the endorsement for exceptional talent. And because it was so new, they wanted ambassadors to tell their story and to help others with the endorsement process. So I was the technician visa ambassador for about 2 years before I became a coach myself. So in 2019, I applied for settlement, the indefinite leave to remain, and I got my British citizenship. So I guess the hardest part of this whole journey and process is the stage 1 endorsement for the Global Talent Visa. Indefinite leave to remain and British citizenship was really easy, very transactional process. I spent 7 years in the UK. I based myself in Manchester and Newcastle and travelled probably every month to London, and I had a startup which I was growing and starting there, so that's why I travelled a lot to London and immersed myself in 3 tech ecosystems, all very different, but the commonality between all 3 tech ecosystems is that everyone is very friendly, everyone is willing to help, and yeah, all the startup community is great. The one thing that I would recommend, and if you are in that journey, is whatever you put in is what you will get out of it. So I was very, very active in the tech ecosystems where I lived. So yeah, I was quite all over the place, meeting lots of people. People knew me, and that's how I grew my own network. I was a solicitor in Australia before I became a tech entrepreneur in Manchester. I had a wearable tech startup, but obviously I had to give that up and work on this full time because this was my calling at the end of the day. How I started was I actually wrote a blog after I received my endorsement. That blog went viral. I was getting lots of inquiries from everyone, and that's how I became a coach. In the sort of 7 years that I've been doing this, I've coached over 1,000 tech entrepreneurs, senior execs, and tech employees. My success rate is 90%, and my clients have received a successful result, some of them, not all of them, within 3 to 27 hours of submitting their application. So yeah, it's a huge, huge accolade and great milestone for my clients. Really love hearing those results. Geez, my clients range and vary from, startups to big corps, lots of people, in different roles, CTOs, CEOs, UX designers, game designers, digital marketers, VPs, customer success managers, semiconductor specialists. So the list goes on. Just because I've helped people in similar roles, their stories, everyone's story is unique and different. And this is why I love doing what I do. Everyone is different. Everyone has a story to tell, and everyone has different achievements and accolades. Just quickly, a disclaimer, I only help with stage 1 endorsement. Stage 2 is a visa stage. I'm not affiliated with the Home Office or Tech Nation, just that I'm an ambassador, I'm an alumni for the Tech Nation visa. Okay, oh, sorry about this. There we go. So over the years, before I applied for my visa and even after I got my visa, I was immersed in the tech ecosystem. As I said, I've been interviewed, I've been featured, I've been, in lots of different tech magazines. And this is the type of things that the assessors are looking for under the leadership criteria as well. So it's really important to get yourself out there and to be known, to show that you are a leader in your field, and being publicly searchable, Google yourself. These are the things that's easy to show the assessor. Otherwise, it would be a little bit more difficult if you don't have these things. Not everyone has these things, but I'm just saying it's just easier if you do. And as I said, for me, because I was so active in my tech community, it was easier for me to show this type of evidence. So this is my blog. If you have a look on my website, you will see my journey, and this is how it all started. So yeah, have a read if you'd like to. So these are some of my clients over the years, from, as I said, from big corporates to startups to employees of product-led digital technology companies from different countries. So Egypt, US, Nigeria, Pakistan, Serbia, India. So yeah, there's loads of different people that I help with, and the criteria is so it's almost like it's quite intimidating, but when you see people that look like you, that do similar roles as you, it helps when they share their story. And like me, we're just normal people trying to do the best we can, and work as hard as we can in the jobs that we're in. So please don't feel so intimidated. This is why I do my webinars. So on the 31st of March, Tech Nation did close, and it did send everyone into a bit of a frenzy about, whether or not the Global Talent Visa was still going to exist for the digital technology route. They have confirmed that it will continue, even though now it's been acquired by the Founders Forum Group. So on the website, it says continue to apply as normal. Tech Nation are still in existence under the Tech Nation Visa route, and you can still apply and just continue as normal. It was really scary around the 31st of March, where people didn't know what was happening, but they kept saying proceed as normal, and that's what we did. And yeah, it's fine. Just keep going as planned. So quickly, Global Talent Visa. It was called the Exceptional Talent Visa, which I applied for, but essentially it's the same thing. It's a special visa that was introduced to allow highly skilled tech entrepreneurs and talent in digital technology the right to live and work in the UK for up to 5 years, and it gives you a route to settlement as well. It's a 2-stage process. So stage 1 is you have to be endorsed by an endorsing body, Tech Nation. And then how you get endorsed is you meet the strict criteria that's set for them. And once you are endorsed, then you can apply for stage 2, the visa stage. You'll see the criteria, and it can look like a job application, but it is more than a job application. And the hashtag Tech Nation Visa, if you want to search it, you might find more information about it. The reason is because the Global Talent Visa is an umbrella visa for lots of different endorsing bodies. So Tech Nation is for the digital tech route. Then you've got the Arts Council, the Science and Engineering, you've got architecture. So you've got lots of different endorsing bodies endorsing under the Global Talent, but this is the Tech Nation digital tech route. The benefits, it gives you the freedom and flexibility to live and work in the UK for up to 5 years under this visa. It gives you a route to settlement, indefinitely to remain, and citizenship. I am proof of that. I've got my citizenship. You can also switch from a tier 2 skilled worker visa, which I help a lot of people with, in terms of, they're on a skilled worker visa and they want to switch to global talent. And the great thing about that is the time that they spend in the UK counts towards the global talent. You can also bring your dependents with you. You can register a UK limited company, which is quite important, especially for graduates or students that I help. They're on a student visa in the UK and they want to have a global talent, because under a student visa they can't register their startup companies. So that's why it's important for them. You can also work for a tech company without the need for a company sponsorship. So the visa stays with you and you can work at different companies and you don't have to worry about anyone sponsoring you, because it is attached to you. And for me, I had a startup. I was on an entrepreneur's visa with that one, and that came to expire. And then I only had 3 months to decide my next path. And luckily, the Global Talent Visa came at the right time and I was able to switch. Otherwise, I'd have to go back to Australia. And when I did switch to Global Talent, I was working on my startup and I wanted a break. So I became a community manager for an accelerator. I worked for a university. I did lots of things, but it was okay because I had my own visa. And then I went back to working on my startup. So it really did give me that freedom and flexibility that I needed. And it is quite cost effective in terms of the fees for stage 1. It's in the hundreds. It's only when you are endorsed and then you get go to stage 2 is when the fees are a little bit higher, but only because it's the immigration health surcharge fee that's high, but the actual application fee isn't that much. So these are just some of the stats. A lot of people, 90 plus countries from US, India, Nigeria, Canada, Russia, they're the most where people apply from. There's a 54% endorsement rate, which isn't great. when I applied, it was about 68%, but I guess because not many people knew about it. But now a lot of people know about it. 1 in 2 applications don't get through. So this is a really strict process, and getting as much support as you can is really important. Try not to do it yourself if you can. It's just only because you're doing it yourself the first time. Whereas if you have someone who's done it before many times, a consultant or myself, I've done it, you know, a lot of times. So yeah, this is why it's not for the faint-hearted as well. And there's been over 3,000 successful recipients. There's been unlimited endorsements now. The reason why this is important is because when I applied in 2016 and up until probably, I think, 2020, there was a cap on endorsements. There were only 200 per year that they were giving out, which is another form of stress, because even if you do meet the criteria, you had to fall within that cap. But now they've said no more cap. Whoever applies, who does meet the criteria, they get through. So that's really good news. And that's only in the last couple of years as well. There's a 68-32% endorsement for exceptional promise and talent. There's a 75-25 for male, female. Tech is a very male-dominated industry, which is why I'm a huge advocate for women in tech. But that's just the stats. And then there's a Tech Nation visa alumni. So once you get your visa, you can join a community of people who have got theirs. And it's a great little community. We have a Slack channel. There's events in London, meetups and things like that, so you can meet other people. So these are just some of the stats as well over the years. I've been keeping a close eye on it myself. You know, I applied in 2016, so there weren't many. But as you can see over the years, the more people know about it, the more people apply. Huge spike here, which was when they, you know, obviously announced that they were going to close. You can see, you know, these are just applications, not endorsements, and endorsements about 54%. So since the announcement back in, I think it was January to March, there were 600 applications submitted. And then the year where they start from is the 1st of April to the 31st of March every year. That's why these stats are 22, 23 and 23, 24. What's really important is in the last 3 months, there were 693 applications submitted. So that is quite a lot, considering if you can see in the last years, you know, that's 1,350. So basically half were submitted in 3 months. So I guess it's probably because people are more worried that Tech Nation will be closing, you know, lots of changes in immigration. So yeah, I can see why. These are just some of the stats that I could only pull from 2020, which would be relevant to you. These are the endorsement rates by country. I do help a lot of people up here, but it's not to say I don't help people down here, but it's just, these are just stats, don't let them put you off. And also, you know, with China, this one's a bit of a red herring. Not many people apply from China. So if, you know, say, for example, 5 people apply and then 4 people get in, of course, the rate is high. And that's what they've said in their report as well. So, you know, a lot of people from countries up here, there's a lot of people applying from these countries. So with the skills, because it is a tech visa, obviously software engineers are applying, but it's not to say it's just tech. There's business skills as well. So biz dev, there's marketing, there's experience investing, you know, so yeah, marketing, operations as well. So those are more business skills, but technical skills and business people with business skills can apply. What's really important in the last couple of years was they actually provided a definition of what a product-led digital technology company was. I've been asking for this for the last few years, and they finally did give a definition. They want people who work for businesses that create a proprietary digital technical service product platform or hardware as a primary revenue source. So no consultancies or agencies or people working for those, because those companies don't build their own products. So if you work for or are a founder of a digital tech company that develops its own products for customers, either by license or subscription or by selling, then that would fall under the definition of a product-led digital technology company, and you would be eligible to apply. So what does this application process and documents look like? There's 15 documents you need to provide, and a lot of people have said it's like a PhD of their career, and they're not wrong. The 5 documents, first of all, everyone has to do this. It consists of your CV, your personal statement, and you need 3 letters of recommendations by experts in your field. And then you need to make up 10 documents, and the 10 documents need to come from their mandatory and optional criteria, and you choose those, okay? And I'll go through that in a sec. as I said, the technical and business skills, people with those skills can apply. If you see yours in here, that's great. It's not an exhaustive list, okay? So if you fall within or you look like you do, just pick the one closest. But what they're trying to say is that anyone that has a technical skill that builds products fall in here. Anyone who's in the role of selling, investing, or in the operations of growing that product-led digital technology company, they would be someone with a business skill. A lot of people have both, and that's okay. When you fill in the form, they just want you to tick one, but if you have both, that's okay. You can tell that story through your evidence. You can be an employee or a founder of a product-led digital technology company. In fact, employees make up 75% of applications, whereas founders only 25%, which I was quite surprised with that. I thought there'd be more founders applying, but no, there's lots of employees applying. And people who aren't considered suitable mainly are those working for consultancies and agencies. But I can help you work that out in my eligibility questionnaires and calls. So there are two categories of which you can apply for. You can apply for exceptional talent or promise. Those who apply for talent, they should have over 5 years worth of experience in the tech sector. You're late in your career, you can prove your leadership through your skills and achievements. And these are people more senior in their career. Those who apply for promise are less than 5 years, they're early in their career, and they have a potential to be a leader, and they're mainly students, graduates, or more junior, okay? And once you decide whether you're a talent or promise, and the difference really is that if you apply for talent and you get it, in 3 years, you can apply for your indefinite leave to remain. But if you apply for promise and get it, you have to wait for 5 years before you can apply for your indefinite leave to remain. So there's a difference in time, okay? And those who are on skilled worker visas, this is where the time matters. If you're on a skilled worker visa for 2 years and then you switch to global talent and you get the talent, you only have to wait 1 year before you apply for indefinite leave to remain. And similarly, with promise, you have to wait for 3 years, okay? So that's why there's a difference there. So there's two types of criteria. There's a mandatory and optional, okay? The mandatory criteria, there's only one. When I applied, there was two, but now there's only one, and you have to show your leadership or potential leadership. The optional criteria, you choose 2 out of 4. And within that, you need to sort of show some evidence for each of the criteria that you select, and you only select 2 criteria, and you should have about 3 pieces of evidence per criteria. That makes up 9 documents, but you're allowed to submit 10 documents. So you pick the criteria that you've already selected and put an extra piece of evidence against that criteria. So in a sense, you're putting 4 pieces of evidence against 1 criteria, 3, and then 3, that makes it 10. So the first optional criteria is innovation. So you need to show that your work is innovative. This is quite a hard one to get over, only because it's quite subjective. But this is what I help clients with, is show that what you do in your job, technical or business skill, is innovative. And not only what you do is innovative, that the product is also innovative. You can also show that you've done some volunteer work outside of your immediate occupation, because I do a lot of advocacy work for women in tech. So I chose this criteria. You can also show that you've had some commercial, technical, entrepreneurial impact to the work that you've done. So you can select that criteria, or you can select your academic contributions, because a lot of people work with universities or researchers in building their product, and they can show that through letters by professors or universities, contacts with universities. I chose that one because I was building my startup, and I built my product and with the help of a university. So I chose that criteria. But you only need to choose 2 out of 4 and pick the one that best suits you and the evidence that you have. So the quick process is this. So there's stage 1 and there's an endorsement stage 1, and then there's the stage 2 visa stage. Within the endorsement stage, there's 2 steps. The first step is you have to pay online and register at the Home Office. Okay, that's the first step. Then you have 15 working days to then upload all your documents onto the TechNation portal. And TechNation is the only endorsing body that has this portal. When I applied, I had to print 100 pages or so and send it by snail mail to the Home Office, and they would send it to the TechNation. So it was a long process and it was quite scary, but now everything's uploading online and it's really easy. TechNation has up to 8 weeks to respond and give you a decision through the Home Office. The average before the whole TechNation closure was 3 to 4 weeks, but they have taken 8 weeks, but the average is about 3 to 4 weeks, I think, because they've got a huge backlog. Now, they tell you whether or not you're successful or unsuccessful. If you are successful, that's great. You just get an email to say you are successful and you go through to stage 2, and that's where you apply for your visa. If you are unsuccessful, you can appeal if you feel that the assessor has made a mistake, and I help with this as well. You've got 28 calendar days to appeal, and it doesn't cost you anything, just your time. And then the assessor, it then goes to another assessor, and then they have 28 days to review your application and determine whether or not you are successful or unsuccessful. Okay, and then if it's overturned, then you go for stage 2. If it's unsuccessful again, you can look at your options. You can resubmit using the feedback that they provide. Otherwise, you may have to seek another visa route. So that's the actual process there. I get a lot of questions when people reach out to me, whether or not are they eligible. If they are eligible, how do they present their evidence? What information is relevant? Because as I said, it's a PhD of your career for the last 5 to 7 years. What is relevant for TechNation assessors and what is not? Who can my experts be? Because you need to provide letters. How do you show your innovation and impact? And how do you show that you are an exceptionally talented leader? And how much experience do you need? And then if you receive an unsuccessful result, what do you do? And I'm dealing a lot with appeals right now. And you know, it is hard. It is really hard to read feedback from assessors. Some can be quite harsh, but I help clients with that. And I have a lot of insights on what assessors are actually looking for. Okay. Eligibility questionnaire is on my website. So the first port of call is whether or not you're eligible, and I can help with that. So please do fill that out, and if you are eligible, I can invite you for a free discovery call to discuss you know, the criteria and the evidence. Now, these are the things that I can help with. Once you are eligible, you'll get a free discovery call so we can discuss it a little bit more. Eligibility is one thing. Meeting the criteria is a whole nother thing, and that's what I'd like to quickly discuss with you. I do have a membership area where I provide templates and more webinars and presentations and resources, but the value in my support is really my one-to-ones with you, because as I said, every person is different and unique, and they have a different story to tell. The first port of call is my strategy session. Before you embark on any project, you need a plan and a strategy. You need to figure out what your story is and what evidence you're going to put together. And then you step back and go, right, okay, now I can get started. And that's what I help with a strategy session. All my packages include access to my membership area as well. So you can also do it yourself once you have a bit of my support if you want to. But if you want some more hand-holding by me, you can either go for my review package, which I will review your application. You do it a little bit by yourself, but I do come in to help guide you through that process. But you do a lot of the work, but I do act as an assessor at the end to review your full application before you submit. And this is really helpful for people because, you know, sometimes they can do it themselves, which is great, but you just need a third party to look at your evidence to make sure that you cross all the T's and dot all the I's, because the assessor does not ask any questions. You have to present the information so they can tick boxes and make sure that you fulfill the criteria. And to have me on board to ask you those difficult questions and to give you ideas and make comments, that's your opportunity to change your application, add more information, make things a lot clearer. Otherwise, if you want real hand-holding, 8 weeks, full support, start to finish, I work on your documents with you. I'm literally in it with you, in the trenches with you, and that's my premium bespoke coaching package. I've done this before. I've done so many for myself, and I've done it for others, so I really know what you're going through. There's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of stress, and yeah, I didn't sleep for 3 months when I did my application, and I was running a startup, and I was at risk of being deported because my visa was expiring. It's tough, so I do hope that I can help you through that process, and I help with appeals as well. So over the years, being a recipient and a coach, I do have some top tips for you. This is your chance to tell your unique story. As I keep saying, everyone has a story to tell. And it is really, someone's reading 80 pages and your story is so important through your documents, and make them know you, make them like you, and make them trust you through your 15 pieces of evidence, 80 pages, so that they can welcome you and endorse you to the UK as well. Your tech network is very important. This requires letters of support, not only from the three experts, but through your application, you may need other letters of support as well. This process is all about self-promotion as well. If you can't articulate your achievements and your accolades and the things that you've done for the companies that you've worked for, the assessor's not going to do that for you. You have to tell them how great you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your impact, your leadership, your innovation. You need to present it to them so they can tick and say, yes, you need to be in the UK. As I said, being eligible is one thing. Meeting the criteria is a whole other thing. It requires a strategy in putting together all 15 documents. And also, finally, please do contact me sooner rather than later. If you need support, I can check your application before you submit, because once you submit and if you get an unsuccessful decision, it's like you can't add new evidence, it's just too late then. Please let me have a look at it before you submit, because time and stress and worry, it's not worth it, it really isn't. Or you can have a strategy session with me and I can help you from the beginning, give you a plan, and then you can go ahead and do it yourself. So those are my major top tips from being a coach and a recipient. I've got lots more, but obviously, I'll give you my 5 top best tips, and then Claire, I think, can give you some more. I've got a YouTube channel where I interview my clients as well, and I put up content, so you can have a look at that. You can have a look at my website, and you can email me as well. So finally, I'm sorry it's taken half an hour, but I would like to introduce Claire. Claire is from the US and she's moving to London, and I love this slide because it shows that you're a very global citizen and that you're leaving your own country to start a new life in the UK, and you're going to do amazing things. You already have done amazing things, but you're going to do even more amazing things with the visa. So welcome, Claire.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Michelle, so much for having me. It's great to be here at the end of my journey through the Global Talent Visa. So we have a bunch of questions that Michelle has given me that I'm going to answer, but at the end, there'll be plenty of time for Q&A. So if I don't cover anything now, don't worry, we'll get to it. So I'll start off with a quick background around who I am. So as you can tell, I'm American. I've spent the majority of my career in New York and San Francisco in both financial services and startups. Splits almost 50-50 between the two. I moved to Europe about 3 years ago when I left the venture capital firm that I was working for and moved to one of their portfolio companies to get that scale-up experience. I initially moved to Berlin, lived there for about a year, and then moved to London in early 2022, both times with Tier Mobility, a global leader in shared micromobility. If you live in London, you've probably seen the vehicles out on the street. From a role perspective, all of my roles, whether it be financial services or startups, have all been some sort of combination of strategy and execution. So I absolutely fall on that business side of the application process, not on the technical side. I know enough to be dangerous, but I have not ever come close to submitting a patent of any kind. Michelle, anything I missed there?
No, I think you've covered it. I mean, you've got such great global experience. You went from US to Berlin, and you actually came to London on a skilled worker visa. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell me, why did you decide to apply for the Global Talent? You've been in London for a year and you're like, I quite like London. I think I might like to stay, even though I had my own visa. But yeah.
So that was a huge part of it. I've also lived in Central and South America. So I have lived in many different parts of the world. And when I came to London, I really felt like it was a place where I could drop anchor and build a life here. So at that point in time, when I decided that I wanted to pursue London on a longer term basis, was when there was all that volatility happening in the tech marketplace. So you started seeing layoffs from Amazon, Meta, all these huge players that you would never expect to see these massive layoffs. You saw that happening. You saw fundraising receding from the VC standpoint. And so there were a lot of dynamics where I think anyone in the tech industry was getting a little bit nervous. So that definitely played an angle. Number two is I just wanted the freedom to stay in a role that I wanted to stay in, not because I was being sponsored, and also to ultimately, if I decided to change jobs, to select a role that I wanted, again, not just because someone could sponsor me. And then, as Michelle mentioned, on the skilled worker, you need to do 5 years in the UK before you can apply for settlement. And for global talent, it's 3 years. So all of a sudden, you go from 20% of the way there to over 30% of the way there. And to me, that was, worth its weight in gold if I could get it to work out.
Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, it's freedom and flexibility. I think, we're at the age where, you've traveled a lot, you're great in your career, you've reached a peak, and then you're restricted again. And it's like, no, I want to have that freedom to experience, life in London, how I want to live. So tell me about your challenges and hesitations. I know you had quite a few challenges. I'd love for you to talk about that, and hesitations before applying. And I'll let you tell that story.
So, I mean, one of the biggest challenges was all of this noise around Tech Nation closure. So even though they didn't submit an announcement until the end of January, there was talk about this end of Q4 last year. And I think this was, again, a lot of volatility in the market. A lot of people were starting to talk about the global talent visa. And so just figuring out how I was going to manage the Tech Nation closure, how did that play into completing my application? And one of the things that it did is I decided to do the application as fast as humanly possible. And you'll see why that ended up not being such a great plan, but we'll get to that in a moment. Another big challenge I had is, I printed out the Tech Nation website. I looked at all of the criteria. I've never done anything sort of government related. My visa for Germany, my visa for the UK was all taken care of by work. And so, I signed some documents and took a picture of my face, and that's what I thought visas were. So when I started to really get into, working through my strategy, working through the documents, and at this time, this was my first application, I was doing it on my own. It basically just became very, very overwhelming. Like many of you on the call, I'm at a point in my career where I'm not always generating all the content. I'm also overseeing running strategy. A lot of what I do is, strategy and planning. And so basically 3 weeks into it, I realized I was in the weeds, and I was in the weeds so far, I was like watching saplings grow. And I'd lost sight of my strategy. I'd lost sight of all the documents. I'd lost sight of the throughput. And so I actually brought on a consultant that was not Michelle. And in all fairness, neither of us were set up for success. It basically just generated a lot of frustration because the key questions I had were, does this storyline make sense? And the feedback I got was, assess your recommendation from person X needs to include their middle name. So it was like this very tactical administrative advice versus I was looking for more 30 to 60,000 foot. This all makes sense. So at that point in time, Tech Nation came out and said that they were going to shut down. It went into like hysteria from everyone that I knew was applying. And I ended up submitting the application. And I would characterize my entire first application process as frustration. I wasn't proud of what I submitted. I knew that I could do so much better than that. And for better for worse, I received the response like 13 days later, and it was, it was a no, which I was not surprised about. And so then if we fast forward to my second application, when I first met Michelle, I was making the decision of should I appeal or submit a new application? Because it's really important to remember that when you appeal, you can't submit any new evidence. You just got to work with what you have. And I decided with Michelle's help that I was just going to do a new application. And so, as I said, I would characterize application 1 as frustration, and I would characterize application 2 as focus. And so I decided to work with Michelle from the get-go. And even within our first email exchange, I knew that she was the person for me to work with, and I knew that we would be a great team. She was very responsive. After my first experience, I wanted someone who was really in the weeds with me and who knew my cast of characters and could talk about them versus being like, who's this person? Which company were they with? And so we had a very long strategy session, went through my application, went through, how I was going to proceed going forward. And one of the big decisions we made was I let go of all the Tech Nation shutdown anxiety. I just decided I wasn't going to worry about it. I wasn't going to worry about the March 31st deadline. What we chatted about is the criteria was unlikely to change dramatically. If I have to tweak some things, so be it. But, it's just not a good use of emotional energy. And so, I would say overall, we'll get to this at the end, but just, it is an investment. Make sure that you put the time into it. Don't rush it. it's not going to go well. It's a lot of material that you need to produce, and there's no shortchanging it. And I think, as I mentioned, I've never done anything government related. And so one of the really hard things about application 1 versus 2 is making sure that all your, I's are dotted and all your T's are crossed. There are so many. And when you're generating so much content for your evidence and your examples, it's easy to kind of forget about those things. And so, that's another really great reason to bring Michelle on. But what I'm going to go into, kind of the other key differences between application 1 and application number 2 is, as I mentioned, application 2 was all about focus. And so what we did is looked at all the examples I had from number 1 and scoped them down to examples that could be publicly available. This is another huge, asterisk this, star this. It is so important to use examples that are publicly available. And one of the big aha moments I had with Michelle is when she told me the mindset of the assessor. Their assessors come from many different backgrounds. You can't assume that assessors know your area of tech. As we know, tech as an industry is massive. You can't assume that they know your company. They can't assume that they understand all, the business jargon that you throw out there. And so, it's better to have 5 really strong examples that recommenders point to versus having 10 that no one can really verify. Because, a lot of what the assessors are trying to understand is they're trying to substantiate what you say and validate what you say. And that's really important. Do you actually know the people who are recommending you? Did you actually do the things that you say you did? And did they actually happen? So that was a huge background. That was a huge shift in strategy to what we focused on. We also changed out a few of the people who had written letters for round 1 for round 2 and focused in on people who could really speak to the work I did. And so as I mentioned, we focused in on a set number of examples, but then I had people speak 360 to it and how my work benefited them. Whether it be from the COO angle, the CFO angle, or, from just people working across the organization. And so it gave the assessor, a real 360 rounded view of all the work that I'd done previously. Another huge change we made is, like many of you on the call, I've been working now 15 plus years. And so my first round, I spoke to, all 15 years. It was like day 1 of my professional career. And so what we did again, the whole theme being focused is we scoped it down to pretty much business school and post. And so I do have an MBA from UCLA Anderson that is focused on tech management. And so really started my tech career there and spoke to everything subsequent to that as well. Because remember, it's 80 pages. It's a lot of content. You don't need to give them your whole life story. Just make sure that there's a narrative and it makes sense. So Michelle played a hugely integral role, in trying to decide this versus that. Because, a lot of the work that you produce, it's kind of your babies. And you're like, well, they need to know about this. It's like, well, they already know about all these things. It's going to be fine. So those are the huge differences between 1 and 2.
Gosh, that's a lot. I can't, like, hearing this, looking back, I'm like, gee, that was a lot of work we did. but we really did refine the second application completely. I'm going to ask about your experts because, as I said, that your tech network is so important. And you had a lot of letters the first time around. Mm-hmm. And as you said, they talked about you, but it wasn't really focused on specific things that you did, and we picked a range of experts. Can you talk about a little bit more about the experts? Because I think and the fact that you need to know them for more than 12 months, that's a new change in the last year or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I picked my recommenders. I had the 3 letters recommendation, and then some of my optional materials were letters as well. And so, as I said, I chose people who I knew very well. Fortunately, a number of people in my tech sphere are also quite accredited themselves. And so that worked out because you need to remember when selecting your recommenders, the, Technician, whomever's the endorsing body will also evaluate them and, how much weight they add to your application as well. And so I chose people that, as I said, that I worked very, very closely with, who could speak to very specific examples and how it impacted them. And so I ended up choosing people from two of the most recent companies I've worked for. And then I also asked a professor at business school to write a recommendation for me as well. And so I focused not only on the work that I produced, you know, and all the stats and criteria that I'm sure you have there, but I also focused on who I am as a person and, you know, the value I provided to the organization, because you can extrapolate that out to the value that you can provide the UK as well. And I think that's really important. Like, you know, your track record speaks to what you'll do in the future. And so, you know, I spoke a lot about having context globally. I spoke a lot about, you know, my desire to ultimately, you know, start a company myself. And because these people have worked so closely with me and have known me for so long, they could speak to all those parts of my journey. They could speak to what businesses were like when I first started, even why I was hired. So why I was hired, what the company was like when I started, what the company was like, you know, towards the end of my projects being completed. And then in the case of my business school professor and, you know, previous companies, speaking to the lasting impact that I have on an organization as well. You know, whether it be process changes that I made or projects I designed, implemented, and led that are still run annually, even though I'm not there anymore. And so they really show the continuum, and it was very clear that they knew me and that they knew me for a number of years. And, you know, to me, that was really important in selecting people also like Michelle, who I knew would care about my application and care about the outcome. Because it's such a personal thing. And it's something, you know, as you're investing all of this time, like I wanted this thing so badly. And I wanted people on board who understood that and would be happy to help me in that endeavor.
Yeah. And I have to say, you were so focused, motivated. But I wonder, is that because you were so lost the first time around that finally, when you got to me, you were like, I have to do this and I have to do it in this time frame. Like everything was pointing towards you have to get this done. And this is one thing when you do a resubmission. And I love working with clients who do a resubmission, because I know really what it really means to them to get it right the second time. And I'm just going to ask you this question, which I haven't asked you before, but were you proud of the second application that we submitted, the difference? And had you done everything that you possibly could? Because this is what I want, where I want you to be, is once you submit, it's in their hands now. You've done everything you can. No regrets. No regrets.
Absolutely. You know, the first one, I prioritize getting it in versus quality. You know, and had I just taken a step back and reassessed everything, maybe it would have been a different outcome. It doesn't matter. What really motivated me was, you know, I venture guess, like many of the people on the call, I like to do things well. I know when I've done things well and when I haven't. And to put something forth, knowing that I could do so much better, that was a huge motivation. And so, you know, with working with Michelle, one of the many great things about her, besides being, you know, so sharp and supportive in all of this, is she knew when to push me. And so, you know, I would be working on an exhibit and she would, you know, really drill down into like, why does this matter? They're not going to know that, you know, and there are times you're like, look, I've already spent like 3 hours on this thing. Like, can we just like, it's going to be fine. But, you know, I remember having a conversation as I was getting ready to submit. I submitted on April 26th. And I said, I know this is all I can do. If I get it, great. If I don't, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But this is the absolute best I could have done. I couldn't have spent any more hours. I wouldn't change one thing about this. And so when I submitted it, it was just a moment of peace and calm. And so as much as Michelle talked about people getting their responses in 3 to 4 weeks, I received 8 weeks, like almost to the day. And I have to say, for those 8 weeks, I wasn't even that stressed, because it was one of those, whatever will be, will be. I did my best. I know I did. And I know I put my best foot forward in all of this. And so obviously I was absolutely thrilled on June 20th when I received that email. I mean, these are dates I will now never forget. I just kind of went silent for 30 minutes and Michelle was the first person I contacted. And I just said, FYI, we did it. And it is an incredible feeling. And honestly, you know, when you put your best foot forward, you don't regret any of the time that you put into it. And, you know, you can't cut corners on this one. And so that would be one of the big things that I stress is just, work with Michelle, start early, listen to her. She has been through this so many times and is such a good sounding board as to, you need more context here. They're not necessarily going to pick up on that because, like so many of you, when you live and breathe your work 12 hours a day, you almost forget that people don't know all the ins and outs of everything that you do. And that's, another way that Michelle is so helpful is she takes a step back, she's a sounding board, but she also knows what they're looking for because she's seen it so many times. And to me, that was so helpful that I could just trust her to the nth degree. There wasn't any friction. As I said, it was all just focus.
Yeah, it was really great. And I really did enjoy working with you, Claire. I hope everyone can see how you work, and you're so passionate and motivated, and you get things done. And this is just another project that you got done and you succeeded. Granted, it wasn't successful the first time, and you were very self-aware about that. You were very clear about not wanting to appeal. Right. Yeah. And you went, no, let's not appeal, let's go straight. And I went, okay, great, let's do it. And there was no looking back. It was just focus to the end. And I'm so proud of you. I'm really proud of everything that you did. And yes, your endorsement, the first, can we just get dates just so that we can give people the idea of dates? So the first endorsement and application, when did you submit that and when did you get the response?
I submitted it on February 1st and I received the no on February 13th.
And that was just after their announcement?
That was just after their announcement.
Right.
And there was so much press coming out that there was a massive surge in applications as well. And so it was literally the day after the announcement. So I had one of those moments where I was like, just submit.
Oh, yeah. Just submit. Okay. So then that was in February, I remember. And then you contacted me and then we got working straight away. So you applied on the 26th of April. So that was February, March, April. Yeah, 2 months. We really did work hard during that shutdown as well.
Yeah, it was, and I think it's also important to note too, we took our time with it. Plus, I'd already been through it once.
Yes.
And so, when you're thinking about allocating time to this project, allocate the appropriate time that, you will have strategy changes, most likely. I mean, Michelle can speak to this better than I can, but, some of the examples I was going to talk about in the initial strategy session, we ended up switching out because as, you get recommendations back and as you work on your exhibits, you start to see how the whole storyline comes together. And if you do this, focus like I did in round one, where I was like, I will submit this thing in 1 month, come hell or high water, you don't leave room for that mental flexibility as well.
Yeah, excellent. And then so April 26th is when you submitted. June 20, 8 weeks, was when you got it. When did you apply for stage 2 and when did you get it?
So I was ready for stage 2. I applied the following Monday. I think it was June 26th. And I might be off by a day or two. So that was on Monday. I got a appointment the next day to do my biometrics. And important to note, I switched from a skilled worker to global talent. So, and I applied from within the UK. So I think it might be a little bit faster because they already had all of my information. I went to my biometric appointment, I think at 8:15 in the morning.
Of course you did.
I did the super rush appointment. And so I found out within a couple hours that my visa was approved. And 2 days later, I had in hand my residence card. Yeah.
So really, on the law of averages, your actual process was 2 months, even though you waited 2 months for the first one.
Almost to the date.
To a bit,
and then the next thing I did was book a trip back to California. And so I will go to California and then come back under a global talent visa.
Oh, fantastic. Oh my gosh. That was it was so quick the first time as well, 12 days, right? Obviously the second one, I know it was because of the backlog with all the applications. You saw the stats, like 600 applications in 2 months. Plus they were transitioning over to Founders Forum. They were going through their own, issues as well. So 8 weeks. So the timing for TechNation is 80% of applications need to be decided within 5 weeks. and 100% of applications need to be decided within eight weeks. So you fell within the last 20, but that's fine. I mean, they had a lot of stuff to read, Claire. We gave them a lot of stuff to read.
There was some small font in a lot of that too.
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff.
It was fine. I have to say, throughout those entire 8 weeks, like as I mentioned, I wasn't stressed about it.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to, at that point, give to the process.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so pleased. Okay, so now you've been through the process twice. What advice would you give? I know you've been giving lots of little tidbits, but to wrap it up, what's your advice?
So to wrap it up, I would say, first and foremost, treat this as an investment. It's not only a monetary investment, but it is a time investment as well. And so, you don't want to end up feeling like I did after number one, where it was, I could have done so much better. I could have teased out the storyline. There's a really famous Abraham Lincoln quote, and I'll probably butcher it to a certain degree, but it's, if I had 7 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend like the first 5 strategizing. Take that time to do the strategy up front. It doesn't matter if you tweak it later on. 85–90% of it will stay put. Spend a lot of time thinking about who you're going to ask for letters of recommendation. Spend a lot of time kind of playing through the storyline and how you think that will play out. Also, hugely important, where you can, use publicly available examples. Michelle is a real guru. I Googled things I never anticipated Googling, but honestly, they unearthed huge things for me. I worked in venture capital, and there are awards given out for venture capital deals. And so added that in. I looked at a lot of examples online as well, but I think what Michelle brings that the examples online can't is just like, how does that relate to your application? And I would say, if you're going to use a consultant, which I highly recommend you do it early. Don't, wait until the last minute and then expect everyone to come on board and understand. You're setting neither person up for success. And I would say, yes, the success rate is 54%, but, Michelle's success rate is entirely different. And so if you want to do it, I would say go for it. There were definitely some times, through the second application when I was like, oh gosh, like, is this all going to end up being a huge waste of time? But knowing myself, and I would venture to guess there are others like me on the call, it's better to have tried than to not have tried. And I can tell you how it feels to get that endorsement is unbelievable. And it's just opened up my opportunities so much, and also given me that opportunity to settle in London earlier. It's really worth more than I could even imagine. So if you're thinking about it, I would say, it's obviously a personal decision, but it's such an unbelievable visa. And I think we're so fortunate to be able to have something in the UK that we can apply for like this.
Yeah. Give me goosebumps. Because this is why I do what I do, because when I went through the process myself, I had no one. Like I couldn't turn to anyone because no one had done it before. So when you talk about this, it brings me back to when I got that letter to say that I was endorsed, and I went, yay me, like who can I share this with? Because it's only those who've been through that can really understand those hard months that you're working just to be able to stay in a country and live and work there. Like, I don't think anyone understands other than others who've gone through the same. The visa process is horrible.
It's hard. And I have to say also, there was a really interesting byproduct that came out of the application process. I think it's such a great opportunity to have this experience really figuring out how to talk about yourself. And so, how to really take ownership of the things that you've done and how to be proud of what you've done as well. I think so often when, you're producing big volumes of work, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I did that, who cares? But it's helpful to say like, no, that actually was a big deal. That does, what you did change the trajectory of companies. And so it's a great way to just move away from, I am Claire with title XYZ to I'm Claire as a human, who does all of these things in conjunction with work. And those values that you bring in leadership and the values and impact you have on an organization, not just from a product standpoint, but also from a behavior standpoint as well.
So I'm really pleased that not only did this process help you get the visa, it also was a process to learn about yourself a lot, because you're so more receptive and willing to talk about your achievements, Claire. Like before, you're like, yeah, I just did this. I think, Claire, that's amazing. We need to, you know, really talk about what you did, why you did, what impact you made, what was your leadership.
Right. It wasn't like a humble brag. It was just, I just didn't really think much, you know, I was just like, okay, yeah, I mean, I do things. They work out. Yeah. So, and so Michelle was really helpful, just, you know, and again, teasing out what are the so what's of everything that you've done as well.
Yeah, and you're really good with, yeah, so what? And you're like, but no, you really did get really good at it. So what are your exciting plans now? Now that you've got your visa, you are going home for a visit. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, one of the things I spoke about in my application that is, you know, in process right now is working on my own startup company as well. And so it's amazing just to even be able to be a director of a company. I would say that's something that's so unique about this visa as well. And I'm also just using this as an opportunity to get out and explore, you know, all the great companies in the UK, because I think what it's also given me is this great mental shift from, as a skilled worker visa, I'm kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And now I feel like both feet are firmly planted in London. And it's not, okay, yeah, you know, everything's fine now, but this could all not work out. It's now like, okay, I have a path that I can see myself staying in London. And so I can just focus my emotional energy on that versus I need to make sure that my skilled worker visa is intact. So again, it's this idea of freedom and mental freedom. And it also just feels really good to get it as well. You know, it's great validation, and you feel, I definitely feel proud of the work that I put forth, and I feel proud of being a member of the UK tech ecosystem as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's just so important to get this, and you know, you've got so many things to look forward to. There's no restriction, and I think that's the main thing. We, as migrants, we're restricted in so many ways, but this allows us to do whatever we want. I've had clients get promotions, start buying houses, you know, think about your future rather than looking at the next 5 years. I've got to go for another visa or whatever. I've had 3 visas and I've just had enough. And I'm so glad I got it. So yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Claire.
You're welcome.
You've had some great insights. I still learn so much from you throughout this whole process, and also today I continually learn from you, and I love hearing you talk. And you are a strategist. That's what you do, and and I hope everyone got really good insights from you today. Yeah, I'm sorry we are right to 1 o'clock, but I want to just let anyone, if they've got any questions, to please do ask Claire. Claire's got so much knowledge. I think, Claire, you can help others now, but I don't know if you want to. Going through it yourself twice is enough. I think a lot of people are like, I can't do it anymore.
I'm happy to take a question though, if there's anyone.
Yeah, please ask Claire any questions. Yeah, so someone's asked, sorry, I'm going to answer a question about my packages. So I do offer installments for my package, for the bespoke coaching package and for the review package. So please do email me and I can talk you through that. But yeah, it is a lot, I know, in one hit, which is why I accept installments. Yeah, so thank you for that question. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has any. We've gone through so much, and if anyone can give any questions, otherwise I'm going to close it. So this is your last chance. I've asked Claire so many questions already. I've run out of questions for Claire. I think I do have a client actually who went through a similar process, Claire. He did it himself, and he got it through me, and he's here listening to your story as well. And Obina, I hope yeah, you can share some of Claire's insights as well. I think you guys went through so much. Okay, do you think they compare old applications with new ones, and would you have tried again if they rejected you the second time around? Yeah, yeah.
So the first question, Michelle, you would know better than I do. What do you think?
Well, the thing is, your application is uploaded on the portal. They shouldn't look at old applications because they should be looking at the application before them. However, there could be a risk that they will look at old applications, and particularly if you change your story a lot, there may be issues there. So the answer is I don't know. They can. I'm sure they can, but whether or not they will, it's a risk. I don't know. I wouldn't change too much. I mean, Claire, you had 2 applications, but your story was still the same. Like, you didn't change anything major.
I think that's a really key point.
Yeah.
I didn't. My story is my story. My background is my background. It was more of a reframing and clarity and cohesion.
Yes.
It wasn't a story change.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
But answering the question, would I have applied again? I probably would have appealed. But honestly,
Yes.
that week that I got endorsed, I spent most of the week thinking how happy I was I didn't have to make that decision. So,
don't think about it. Yeah,
yeah.
no, we would have definitely appealed.
Mhm.
And I help with the appeal process. I would go, Claire, you relax, let me take the appeal, let me do it, and I will get the keyboard warrior in me out and I would appeal. Because yeah, I knew your application so well that how would they, reject this one? We've done so much, and crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, I don't think we would have left any stone unturned. But
No,
there's always there is always that risk.
yeah, and I mean, I'm a very detail-oriented person, so I made sure that like every company name was spelled correctly. I mean, I kind of went psychotic about it at the end there, but
yeah,
I just
I can attest to that.
just want to make sure it was good. So.
Yeah. Okay. Did you change recommenders from application 1 and 2? And how many recommenders is optimum? You answer the first, I answer the second.
I changed out 2 recommenders. And again, the whole thesis behind that was they told different angles than the previous recommenders had done. So it gave, it just showed a different lens of the same story as opposed to 2 people talking about the same story.
Correct. Yes. So this is important. And this is something that is slight change in the guidelines, which people may or may not know. Before, they wanted 3 letters from experts from 3 different organizations talking about 3 different things about you. Okay, 3 different people from 3 different organizations. Now they're asking for 3 people, 3 different individuals. So it doesn't matter what organization. But I still go back to the first one where it's 3 different people from 3 different organizations, because you want to take advantage of 3 people telling 3 different stories about you. There's no point having 2 people from the same organization saying the same thing about you. You're just wasting one letter where someone else can say something good about you, something different to tell that story. Claire, how many letters? I mean, I think you had a lot of letters the first time around, but we reduced it a lot the second.
We did. I think,
yeah,
I went from 8 to 6, maybe.
Yeah,
that sounds right. And focus more on, teasing out more about the projects I had worked on. Because, another key point coming from the business angle, when you're not submitting patents and things like that, one thing that Michelle really hammered home to me is what you're trying to show is your innovation is your strategy and how you did things differently. Yeah, and so absolutely that can require a lot of context as well, which helps, illustrate the story to the assessor.
Correct. Yeah. So ideally, I mean, the guidelines provide 3 letters of recommendation by experts. Like, everyone has to do that. But then under the optional criteria, you can put letters in under the optional criteria. So typically when I work with people, all in, you should have about 6 to 7 letters. 3 being your expert letters of recommendation, and maybe 3 or 4 to help you with your other pieces of evidence. This is why your network is really important. It's almost like looking at everyone you know, see if they can help you tell your story. Okay, I hope that helps. And that's really important, because I don't think a lot of people know that. And then whoever you pick have to be the right people to tell that story for you, not just any story. Okay, great. Thanks, Rupa. You can email me and we can talk about it a bit more. Chen, you did ask about my my email. That is correct, techvisa@michellehewer.co.uk. Okay, we're a bit over time and Claire's very busy. She's 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 an exceptionally talented leader in tech now, and I do thank you. And if everyone can congratulate Claire, if you can hit an emoji. And I do this, and it's just a try. It's a pilot. If you can hit an emoji on your keyboard, and congratulate Claire. I love that, because no one can talk and there you go.
That's great. And also thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully it was useful, and hopefully some of the things that I learned, challenges I went through, can help mitigate the challenges that you go through, and hopefully get a successful outcome.
Yeah, thank you. And you are our role model, Claire. You are mine. You're so inspirational, and we will keep in touch. And I wish you all the best. And I want to see everything, you know, that you're doing on LinkedIn and publishing things and being more public, because, you know, you're amazing, and I really enjoyed working with you. And also, just one last thing, thank you for trusting me in this process and choosing me, because I do love working with people like you, and all I want is success and the visa for you, and best wishes.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for working with me.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.